Good morning, and this is Douglas Ferguson, and today I'm here with Nicole Baer from Logitech. Always a pleasure chatting with you, Nicole. Looking forward to today.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you as well. Nice to see you, as always.
Yeah, so yeah, so I'm gonna put a little note here. If anyone's listening in, please say hi and ask questions. Leave comments. We will respond, and we'll bring you in and get you engaged. It's a little bit of a delay, but we'll be happy to answer them as we see them. So we were just chatting a little bit earlier before we got started here, Nicole, about just a lot of the impacts of the pandemic on work life. And I think before the pandemic, there's tons of talk around work-life balance, and now we've been thrown into these weird, I would say, paradigm shifts around what that means and how we navigate that, and even some of it's even we don't have much choice. It's just like it's almost like just reactionary and protecting. So you want to share a little bit about what you've been reading and kind of what's coming up for
Yeah,
you from all this?
yeah. What I was mentioning before is that, of course, I've heard as a woman leader, I've heard about exits from the workforce with women during the pandemic, and of course, this is something I'm attuned to. I'd heard that there was this growing trend around it, but it really hit home with me where I had two women who are C-level executives that I've worked with who have been in their roles for more than 5 years. So they've been, they're senior, they're seasoned C-suite folks, and they both left the workforce in the last month. And it really made me interested in like what exactly is going on. I mean, of course, I've had my own experience, with remote learning and my own kids and working from home and all of that. But I really wanted to dig in a little bit more into the data that we're seeing around this. And it was just very troubling, I think is the right way to describe it. Things like all of the workforce exits in December were women, according to the Bureau of Labor and
Mm.
Labor Statistics. Yeah, which is crazy. And there, things like women are now working, have 3 more hours a day of what's called unpaid work, which is essentially household work that's been layered on top of the work that they do during the pandemic. Essentially they're saying that if things don't turn around, we're already at the lowest levels of women's participation in the workforce since 1988, which has basically been set back 30 years. And that in order to right the ship, it'll take another 2 years. And if we don't return to the same levels we're at, it's a $1 trillion loss for the economy. So this is like a real economic problem, which of course it is. These issues always are. So it was really interesting, troubling, and I think the big question for me will be what are employers going to do to continue to enable hybrid work so we can emerge out of this time that we've been in as quickly as possible.
Yeah, as we were talking earlier and then thinking about it more as you were elaborating just now, it just struck me as what can organizations do to, because we're going to be not only combating the loss of employees and colleagues, people we care about, who we
Yes.
love to work with and be around. So what can we do to combat that? And then also once things shift and we're able to bring folks back in, how do we ensure that we don't see a giant pay equity gap started to emerge
Yeah.
again? Because we've seen some progress there, but we definitely don't want to take steps back there as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, one thing that was heartening to me is there was recently a study by Frost and Sullivan, which is a very reputable analyst in our space at Logitech. And there was something that was great, which showed that of a study of 1,100 IT decision makers, that upwards of 50% expect that they will continue to see work from home and hybrid work, and they're going to invest in that. In fact, 90% of them said that they were going to invest in collaboration tools. And so I think this is a longer term trend, which I think is great. But there's always that issue too, as we were talking a little bit before, Douglas, of FaceTime and the perception of how important FaceTime is still. around the perception of performance by managers. So there was another study that was interesting. I really dug into this. There was another study that showed, it was by Gartner, and it showed that there still is a perception that folks that are in the office are higher performers than those that are working from home. But in reality, when they looked at the data, in fact, those that work from home performed 5% on average higher. It's like when you look at quantitative data. And so that was really interesting, that there's this disconnect between the perception that if you're not in the office, you're not working as hard, which could disproportionately affect women who have been, sort of taking on more of the role, at least during the pandemic, of taking care of the household, et cetera. But it's a disconnect between what the reality is, which is that those that work from home are oftentimes higher performing than those that are in the office. So, that's another sort of hurdle that we'll need to cross, even if hybrid work enables women to come back into the workforce at a higher rate than they otherwise would have, and we can close those gaps. There's still a performance perception that's a gap that could also impact pay. So
yeah, it sounds like there's a leadership development angle, which is helping leaders understand that trust is really important. And it's a weird double-edged sword, because if we're not trusting folks, then that's going to drive performance lower as well. So like what we perceive as a lack of productivity for remote work might be something a situation we're creating ourselves as leaders, because we don't trust people to do the work, and so they're not going to be fulfilled in the work.
Right. That's so true. And that trust piece is so important. I think that is, what we are seeing is, I think that replication for FaceTime, keeping trust, continuing to keep levels of collaboration, or one of the things we're seeing at Logitech is this really doubling down on the investments in tools that will allow people to collaborate and build that trust and continue to build those relationships. Because I think, we've all experienced hiring during this time where it's different to make relationships over video than in person. And there needs to be that right blend, I think, of, especially as you're bringing people in, building relationships, building trust, being able to have as much as you can of like a real connection with people. So we're definitely seeing a double down in investment in things like webcams and headsets to help outfit, the hybrid worker with a better setup than they had before. So that's really good to see. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we go back into this time and rebuild trust around remote work, and make sure that employees continue to feel supported. That was another thing we saw in the Frost and Sullivan study, as well as the Gardner study, that this is so critical to making sure that we can have a sustainable remote workforce.
I was also thinking, I wonder if that study did any controls around, isolating individuals that feel like they have an adequate space, because there's not only the equipment, but the space that matters. And if someone's working on the kitchen table, while the kids are running around, that's and it's like cramped environment, that can be a challenge as well. So I think, companies investing in equipment and space, or, just being thoughtful around what that remote employee is having to deal with, and how can we address those conditions.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I also think that, one thing I think we've all seen is like this rising importance of mental health, and the responsibility of companies to ensure that they're supporting employees with their mental health as well. And I think in terms of, the physical spaces, we're there are lots of things out there now to help define your personal space more, right? Like backgrounds, et cetera. But I think, as you and I were talking earlier too, there's, really cool new technology on the horizon, like Microsoft's Mesh platform, which is, AR, VR enabled, so that you could be you can sort of be a hologram of yourself wherever you need to be, and sort of this actual physical space that you're in doesn't really matter. And that is pretty crazy cool off in the horizon, where you really completely, leap over the issue of your physical space if really what you are is a hologram. So
honestly, I'm pretty excited about that tech, and I got a Quest 2 over the holiday,
Many people did.
and well, it's like it's fascinating to me, especially I watched the mesh video. I love these like uh, design futures type videos.
Mhm.
I don't, I've seen some great ones from Apple, and then Microsoft's done some really good ones. Google, I don't know. I'm sure Logitech has done some too, but anyone,
Mhm.
people are visioning around what's possible, and just, it's kind of fiction, but it's kind of almost this prescient future kind of
Yeah,
thing. And the thing that really blew me away in that video, and it struck me as we can't be too far away from this, was this notion of we're in this kind of AR's like VR space, and we're
Mhm.
kind of moving like these visualizations as if they're three-dimensional objects. So I've got
Right.
this graph that's like it almost feels like a physical thing, and I say, here, Nicole, and then you can spin it and play with it,
Yeah,
add something to it, and hand it back to me.
right.
And man, that is like this direct manipulation stuff
It was
is going to be a
mind-blowing.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I would love to hear more about what I know, since I know you do a lot of work with design and how you collaborate around the design process, right? I mean, and how you facilitate that process. And so that was what I also agree with you. That was a really interesting part of that video that they did, was showing people, like architects working on developing, new buildings and space and collaborating on that together. Or, there were people that were designing what looked like sort of models of things and picking them up and moving them around. I mean, that was pretty mind blowing, but really cool. And we also got, in my house, we also got Oculus over the holidays
Yeah.
too. And it's pretty neat. I would say we had a small mishap in that one of my children accidentally, like, I was walking by and like clocked me with the
Yeah.
controller. So now that was one learning I said, is like, give a good radius away from
Oh yeah. I
from
was playing table tennis, and the physics were just so good that I set the paddle down on the table. I totally like
oh,
got so immersed I forgot I set it on the table, and then of course it hit the ground.
yeah,
Like
a rude awakening. Yeah,
for
very cool. Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I think we'll start to see, like you were saying, I mean, it seems far off, but I think, you think about a lot of things where it seemed so far off, and then it became a reality faster than, we sort of could have imagined. So, Microsoft certainly isn't setting a time frame around when these things will be broadly available, um, they will be, just a question of when.
And I always think of Logitech as this awesome, you're kind of right there with the trends, and like just helping offer up like hardware to the masses to realize some of these things. So also fascinated to watch what you guys are doing as these trends start to evolve, and how because it's fine if like Apple makes like a VR headset, and sure, it's really beautiful and like and
Yeah,
whatnot, but can we get it to the masses? Because I think that's a mark of real innovation when we can actually deploy it at scale. And I've always thought that's something that Logitech's really great at, as far as like the products and this hardware that you bring to market.
thank you. Yeah, that is, that's definitely, it's not just our reputation, it's really the way that we think about our products, and we think about our product roadmap, et cetera, is making, for example, making video collaboration more democratized. And so everybody can have access to being able to have video meetings, like coming back to that person who's working from home that wants to feel included. So, inclusivity is really, really important to us. And it goes into so much of the way we think about our products, is making them accessible at scale. And that's true for our, not outside of video collaboration, it's true for our gaming business, for our mice and keyboards business, for our mobility business, and one area where we have focused on that a lot over the last year has been education. And we've made, I think, some really significant impact in a positive way into helping educators during this time.
I think that's one of the most noble pursuits. I was just reminded, me and my wife were having this fun thought experiment around, the different sounds that might transpire over Zoom or not, right? like, oh, wait, is my environment as private as I think? And so we started doing some Googling, just some experiments, just to see what we could find, and there were we stumbled on some classroom videos of
Mhm.
little, I would say these are probably 7th, 8th graders,
Uh-huh.
really just giving the teacher just hell, and like,
Oh
but
yes,
like,
I know. I have one
but
of those.
being mean, but then also laughing and having fun, and the teachers like kind of gotta just like laugh with them a little bit too. Otherwise they're like just like lose control. And I was like, man, that is a whole separate. Talk about the art of facilitation. That's a whole nother
Oh yeah,
world. So like
it is.
anyone who's like creating software and hardware to help them navigate this stuff, I think that's like noble pursuit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
All right. Well, these are real quick, little 15-minute live streams. So we are at time. And I want to say thanks so much for stopping in today. And also thanks for bringing such awesome research. It really made for a great, fun conversation. And it's really important stuff. So everyone, please keep this on your thoughts, how we can support our most talented women as they're looking at needing to leave the workforce, and how can we help keep them, and how can we help bring them back when the time's right, if they do have to leave.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Douglas. It was always fun
Thank
as
you,
always.
Nicole. Yeah.